Every Kakashi Hatake Jutsu. Kakashi Hatake is a shinobi of Konohagakure's Hatake clan. Famed as Kakashi of the Sharingan, he is one of Konoha's most talented ninja, regularly looked to for advice and leadership despite his personal dislike of responsibility. To his students on Team 7, Kakashi emphasizes the importance of teamwork. He himself received this lesson, along with the Sharingan, from his childhood friend Obito Uchiha. After the Fourth Shinobi World War, Kakashi becomes Konoha's 6th Hokage. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over every jutsu Kakashi Hatake can do. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Chidori. The Chidori is a high concentration of lightning chakra channeled around the user's hand. The Chidori was created by Kakashi Hatake after he failed to apply his lightning nature to the Rasengan. He intended for the Chidori to be a weapon used only to protect friends and loved ones. To perform, the user first gathers lightning to their hand. The high concentration of electricity produces a sound reminiscent of many birds chirping, hence the name. The lightning chakra has been shown on occasions to damage the user's hand, peeling the skin and causing it to smolder slightly, but this does not appear to actually be debilitating. Once the chakra is gathered, users charge at their target and thrust the Chidori into them, piercing them and typically causing fatal damage. Despite the sound it makes, the rapid speed at which it's used makes it useful for assassinations. The speed at which the Chidori is performed, despite being one of its greatest assets, also represents one of its biggest drawbacks. Users move at their target so fast that it causes a tunnel vision-like effect for them. Because they charge in a straight line, it's easy for opponents to attack them, and because of the tunnel vision, it's difficult for the user to see these attacks, much less react to them. For this reason, most ninja cannot use the Chidori safely. However, a user of the Sharingan can overcome these drawbacks due to its heightened visual perception preventing the tunnel vision from occurring, and its predictive capabilities making it easier for the user to avoid counterattacks. Kakashi's skill with the Chidori eventually became so good that he was able to split a bolt of lightning with it, earning his Chidori the name Lightning Cutter. The Chidori requires a large amount of chakra to be performed, placing a limit on how many times it can be used per day. In Part 1, Kakashi can use it 4 times per day, and Sasuke Uchiha can use it twice per day under his own power. Both increase their limits to an unspecified number in Part 2. During Part 2, Sasuke demonstrates several variations of the Chidori that have been given shape transformation, such as Chidori Senbon and Chidori Sharp Spear, both of which allow him to attack at a longer range than the Chidori is regularly capable of. Demonic Illusion Hell Viewing Technique. This technique subjects targets to visions of their greatest fear, regardless of whether or not they're aware that they're afraid of it. This fear can be something that the target is actually scared of, or merely the one image that they would least like to see. When Kakashi Hatake uses this technique on Sakura Haruno, he makes eye contact with her as he activates it. Kakashi then seems to disappear in a swirl of tree leaves, leaving behind what Sakura fears, a dying Sasuke Uchiha. Being presented with such a gruesome image, one that at the time Sakura believes to be real, gives her enough of a shock that she faints when seeing it. Earth Release, Double Suicide Decapitation Technique. When lurking underground, the user grabs a target and drags them into the earth, leaving only their head above the surface. Because victims are rendered unable to move in this state, they're easily subjected to torture or decapitation. Such extreme measures are not required, however, when Kakashi Hatake uses this on Sasuke Uchiha. It's only to restrain him. Sasuke is eventually able to free himself. Earth Release, Earth Wave Technique. The user slams their palm onto the surface below their feet, making it move akin to waves. This technique is said to require a considerable amount of chakra. Earth Release, Earth-Style Wall. This technique allows the user to create a protective wall out of earth. One method of doing this is for the user to convert chakra in their body into an earthen material that they spit from their mouth. The more skilled the user, the greater the volume of earth that can be created. The earth quickly piles up into a defensive wall, blocking incoming attacks. Although the muddy material is solid on its own, it's further fortified with a coat of chakra, making it more resistant to fire and water than it would otherwise be. A second method of performing this technique is to instead manipulate pre-existing earth directly. By placing their hands on the ground, users can raise the ground as a barrier in front of them. Walls erected this way are typically featureless, but users can alter the appearance if they choose. Kakashi adorns his with bulldog sculptures. Users are not limited to strictly defensive uses for this technique, as they can create walls behind targets to prevent them from escaping, or even to entirely surround and encase said targets. The anime shows users creating these walls from afar. In Kakashi Retsuden, the Earth-style wall is one of several techniques that Kakashi specifically improves his ability with after the Fourth Shinobi World War to make up for the loss of his Sharingan. His improved Earth-style wall is large enough to surround a small village, strong enough to withstand a barrage of cannons, and Kakashi can convert sections of the wall to quartz to negate Earth's natural weakness to lightning. Kakashi is able to keep the wall up for over a day. Earth Release, hiding like a mole technique. This technique changes earth into fine sand by channeling chakra into it, allowing the user to dig through it like a mole. The effect goes around the body, not just the hands, making it just large enough for a person to move through. The user can pinpoint where they are despite being underground by sensing magnetic forces. They can also sense what's happening on the surface and use that information to launch a surprise attack on the enemy. One can also hide deep in the ground, escaping to a depth where the enemy can't reach. It also appears that after digging, the ground can be returned to its original state, leaving no trace of where the user entered the earth. When combined with clone techniques, the user can use the clone to lure their enemies into a trap or false sense of security before launching a surprise attack from below. Earth Release, multiple Earth-style wall. Like the parent technique, it creates a reinforced wall of earth to be used as a defensive mechanism. Using a pre-existing source of earth, however, it allows the user to create multiple walls of earth, further fortifying their defense, so that even while the outer walls are destroyed, the inner ones are left intact. The walls can also be curved inward to block escape from above. Earth Release, Rending Drill Fang. While submerged beneath an enemy, the user launches themselves out of the ground to attack. 8 Gates. The 8 gates are 8 specific tenketsu along the chakra pathway system. The 8 gates exist in order to limit the flow of chakra within an individual's body. Ordinarily, individuals can use no more than 20% of their body's full potential, the brain's way of protecting the individual from harming their body through overexertion. With training, individuals can learn to remove these limiters, referred to as opening the gates. With each opened gate, individuals are given access to more and more of their body's chakra, thus increasing their physical strength and speed. Ninja able to open the 8 gates have existed since at least the time of Madara Uchiha. Since Madara's era, there have only been a few known users. Might Dai learned to open all 8 gates after 20 years of extensive training. Might Guy, Dai's son, was taught how to open all 8 gates by his father. Rock Lee, Guy's student, was taught how to open some of the 8 gates by Guy. During part 1, he's able to open the first 5 gates. By part 2, he's able to open the 6th gate. By adulthood, Lee had mastered all 8 gates. In the anime, Metal Lee, Rock Lee's son, is shown subconsciously opening the first gate. Kakashi Hatake is seemingly able to open the first gate, as seen when he activates it during a cliff climbing practice. The anime later shows him opening it explicitly. Learning to open any of the 8 gates is apparently very difficult, as Kakashi is surprised when he's told that Lee, only 13 years old at the time, can open 5 gates. Kakashi notes that such an accomplishment is impossible through hard work alone. Part of Kakashi's surprise is also because he does not believe it wise for Guy to teach Lee to open the gates in the first place. Although opening the gates does briefly give the user power greater than what they're normally capable of, this increased power causes the user serious harm. At a minimum, the user will be fatigued, which can leave them vulnerable to attack if this occurs during combat. In more extreme cases, muscles can tear and bones can break from the strain, which can be treated with medical ninjutsu. When opening the 8th and final gate, users will die as a consequence, their bodies being unable to survive the immense amounts of chakra flowing through them. Using the 8 gates is described as a double-edged sword, empowering users by sacrificing their own health and safety. Such risks have caused the 8 gates to be likened to Genjutsu. Because of this, Dai developed a self-rule to dictate when it was acceptable to open any of the 8 gates, a rule he passed on to Guy, and that Guy subsequently passed on to Lee, to only open the 8 gates when protecting something that is precious enough to give one's life. Often this precious something is a family member, a loved one, or a teammate. Rock Lee has also been known to use the 8 gates to defend his Nindo, the dream by which he leads his life. Evil Sealing Method. This technique suppresses the power of a cursed seal. Because applying cursed seals in the first place requires a great deal of skill, suppressing one with this technique also requires a great deal of skill. The preparations needed for this technique are quite arduous. Users write several long lines of symbols in their own blood, which trail from the cursed seal through the surrounding area. Once this is completed and the technique is activated, these symbols converge towards and surround the cursed seal, the blood acting as a chain that prevents the cursed seal from spreading. Applying the evil sealing method is quite painful, and recipients are likely to pass out after receiving it. The evil sealing method can only suppress cursed seals, not remove them. Its power also relies on the will of the recipient. If the recipient wants it to work, then it will fight off the cursed seal's effects as much as it can. But if the user would rather the cursed seal activate, the evil sealing method will be powerless to prevent it. For this reason, after Kakashi Hatake suppresses Sasuke Uchiha's cursed seal of heaven, Kakashi takes efforts to train Sasuke so he won't be tempted by the cursed seal's power, notably teaching him the Chidori. This ends up not being enough for Sasuke, and he willingly accepts the cursed seal of heaven's influence. Over the following years, the evil sealing method remains imprinted upon him, but inert since Sasuke has no need for it. When the cursed seal is ultimately removed, the evil sealing method is removed as well. In the anime, Kurenai Yuhi uses this technique to hold back the Kurama clan's Kekkei Genkai. Eye mind reading. Eye mind reading is a technique that allows the user to read another's mind. By subtly weaving signs with their eye, the user can delve into the mind of their target without them noticing, even on a target that is currently infiltrating the user's mind. The user is also able to perform this on themselves to dive deeply into their own memories, and restore or remove information in their own mind. Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. The user needs chakra in their body and turns it into fire, which they then expel from their mouth. The more chakra they use, the more flames are produced. Sometimes the flames lack a distinct shape, being only a stream, but more often than not, they take the form of a giant orb that maintains its shape until hitting a target. Upon impact, the fireball is powerful enough to crater the ground and vaporize the surroundings. Against living targets, the fireball can cause extensive burns. The Great Fireball technique was created by the Uchiha clan and over time became one of their signature abilities. The Uchiha, in fact, used the Great Fireball technique as a coming-of-age rite, with members not being considered true adults until they learn to perform it. Fire Release, Water Mist. Kakashi creates a bird of flames under his complete control that quickly flies into a designated water source, burning hot enough to cause the water to evaporate. The bird disappears as soon as the water's gone. Flying Revolving Sword. The wielder throws Kubikiri Bocho at the opponent, dealing damage as it spins towards them. If the Kubikiri Bocho gets stuck on something in its path, a person can stand on it. Front Lotus. The user delivers an upward kick to their opponent, sending them high into the air. The user follows the opponent along with their upward trajectory, taking tight hold of them so they can't move or escape. Rock Lee wraps opponents with the bandages he wears to help in this regard. Once they've reached the peak of the initial kick's arc, the user begins a spinning motion and propels them headfirst towards the ground. The user releases the opponent right before impact and retreats to safety, leaving the opponent to collide with the ground alone. Because the Front Lotus requires at least one of the 8 gates to be opened, users are likely to be fatigued afterwards and thus vulnerable to attack. For this reason, Might Guy mandates that Lee only use the Front Lotus to protect something or someone important. Genjutsu, Sharingan. Genjutsu Sharingan broadly refers to a range of genjutsu performed with the Sharingan. It has also been shown to be performed through the Sharingan's higher evolutions, the Mangekyo Sharingan and the Rinnegan. By establishing eye contact with a target, the Sharingan user traps them within a genjutsu which can be exploited for one of various purposes, such as causing instantaneous but temporary loss of consciousness or paralysis in the target, forceful extraction of information, relaying memories, erasing memories, removing genjutsu placed on the target by others, and controlling a target's actions. Members of the Uchiha clan are particularly famous for using their Sharingan to control the Nine-Tails, so much so that Konoha quickly came to suspect Uchiha involvement in the Nine-Tailed Demon Fox's attack. Sasuke Uchiha is noted to be able to use the technique through his Rinnegan to trap all the tailed beasts in a Genjutsu with a mere glance. The illusions created by the Genjutsu Sharingan do not appear to have any trademark form, appearing vastly different between the same functions, and even the same users. For example, Sasuke typically uses it to render targets unconscious, yet on the first occasion the target's body is pierced with large feathers. On another, the target is grasped and overwhelmed by a shadowy figure, and on the third, the target experiences Sasuke personally stabbing them. Hiding in Mist Technique. This technique is a specialty of Kirigakure ninja. Users fill the air with mist and control its thickness with their chakra. Once the mists are thick enough that opponents cannot see, that in turn means they cannot manage much defense against the user. Zabuza Momochi famously used this technique to perform assassinations. Although he could also not see within the mists, he was able to locate his targets based on the sounds they made. The mists can be created by using water from the surroundings, or users can create the mists themselves, which they exhale from their mouths. If the mists are made thick enough, they can cancel out the enhanced vision of the Sharingan and Rinnegan. In the anime, Byakugan users are able to see through the mists. Sensors can also still find targets despite the lost visibility. Kamui. Kamui is a space-time ninjutsu that can be used with Obito Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan. Kamui allows the user to transfer objects to and from another dimension. These transfers are often characterized by a spiraling void that targets swirl into or out of, distorting their form as they move between dimensions. Targets that enter Kamui's dimension are completely untraceable, as not even their chakra can be detected while they're there. Targets that exit Kamui's dimension do so with varying force, either simply appearing at the ejection point or flying from it. If weapons, such as Shuriken, are stored in Kamui's dimension, ejecting them forcefully gives Kamui's users an offensive application. Using Kamui is the only known way to travel to and from its dimension. This means that targets transferred there are trapped, forced to stay until Kamui's user lets them leave. Obito sometimes uses Genjutsu on those he imprisons to keep them subdued. This also makes Kamui's dimension effective as a refuge, as someone taking shelter there can only be reached by using Kamui. But because Obito's two Mangekyo Sharingan spend years with different users, Obito himself and Kakashi Hatake, this means Obito and Kakashi essentially are immune to each other's Kamui. Although one of them can use Kamui on the other can just use Kamui on themselves to escape. This also means they can block or counter each other's attempts to use Kamui on others. Kamui ordinarily only connects its dimension with the Earth. If a user synchronizes Kamui with another space-time ninjutsu, Kamui can travel to the other ninjutsu's target dimension. But if the user doesn't have the original ninjutsu to piggyback off, traveling between dimensions becomes extremely difficult, since Kamui doesn't naturally connect to them. Users can manually generate portals to these other dimensions, but this requires a great deal of chakra, so much so that users will likely need another person's assistance. Additionally, Obito in the Purgatory is able to use Kamui to temporarily return his soul to Earth to continue assisting Kakashi by granting him the use of his Sharingan for a short time. Kamui Lightning Cutter. Kakashi forms a lightning cutter imbued with the Six Paths power, then utilizes the intangibility effect of Kamui on the lightning cutter. Together with the phasing effect, Kakashi unleashes a high-speed thrust, warping the pierced part of the enemy into Kamui's dimension instantly. Kamui Shuriken. Kamui Shuriken is a technique utilized by Kakashi Hatake through his Susanoo. After manifesting the complete body Susanoo, Kakashi is able to create several large projectiles shaped like Obito Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan, which he imbues with Kamui. The shuriken are then launched by Susanoo, rapidly spinning towards the intended target before cutting and instantly warping them into Kamui's dimension on contact. Lightning Cutter. The Lightning Cutter is the special name for Kakashi Hatake's Chidori. Kakashi's Chidori gained the name Lightning Cutter when he used it to split a bolt of lightning. Although this indicates greater finesse with Kakashi's Lightning Cutter than exists with the standard Chidori, it isn't clear how they differ because they are performed in fundamentally the same way. Both concentrate lightning chakra in the hand, both are used to rapidly pierce targets, both cannot safely be used without the Sharingan. When Deidara refers to Sasuke Uchiha's jutsu as Lightning Cutter, Sasuke corrects him and explains that his jutsu is technically only a Chidori. Like the Chidori, the Lightning Cutter requires a large amount of chakra to be performed, placing a limit on how many times it can be used per day. In Part 1, Kakashi can use it 4 times per day, which he increases to an unspecified number in Part 2. During Part 2, Kakashi demonstrates several new uses for the lightning cutter, such as forming one in each hand to counteract powerful lightning attacks. On another occasion, he links his lightning cutter with one of his shadow clones, using the arc of electricity to cut through multiple targets. He can also flow it into a kunai, enhancing its slicing power and giving him a method of throwing the lightning cutter. While Kakashi's body is briefly inhabited by the spirit of Obito Uchiha, he applies Six Paths power to his lightning cutter, allowing it to damage Kaguya Otsutsuki. He combines this usage with Kamui, causing her counterattacks to pass through him harmlessly. Lightning release. Lightning beast tracking Fang. The user forms lightning in their hand and launches it at the opponent in the form of a hound to attack them. As the hound is very fast and its movements are unpredictable, it's quite difficult to avoid. The user's hand remains connected to the hound by a cord of lightning, allowing them to freely manipulate the speed and range of the technique. Lightning release. Purple electricity. The user shoots a bolt of electricity from their hand to strike a target. It was invented by Kakashi Hatake as a replacement for the lightning cutter, which he could no longer safely use after the loss of his Sharingan. In Kakashi Hiden, Kakashi typically uses purple electricity to strike targets from a distance, though he does sometimes use it through direct contact, as when he places his hand on spilled alcohol in order to transmit purple electricity throughout the surrounding area. He can modulate the intensity of the purple electricity, creating a blast strong enough to remove a target's explosive vest, but without setting off the explosive or otherwise affecting the target. The anime has sometimes shown purple electricity being used in ways reminiscent of the lightning cutter, with Kakashi gathering lightning to his hand and quickly striking targets with it. He can even use it similarly to the Chidori current, sending bolts of purple lightning all around his body in an omnidirectional attack. Lightning release. Shadow clone technique. This technique allows the user to make a shadow clone infused with lightning. Because it's a shadow clone, it's able to perform techniques and interact with the environment. If the clone is injured, it will revert to its natural lightning state, at the same time electrocuting whatever makes contact with it. Unlike a regular shadow clone, however, it does not send chakra back to the user upon reverting to lightning. Lightning transmission. Kakashi and a shadow clone both perform the lightning cutter on opposite hands, which they connect together with a sharp cord of lightning between themselves. It was powerful enough to slice through a tailed beast's chakra arms with relative ease. The technique can also be used to wrap around a target and restrain it. Multiple shadow clone technique. This technique is a larger scale version of the standard shadow clone technique. There's no real difference between them beyond the number of shadow clones being created. Creating even a single shadow clone will require half of a user's chakra, for which reason the normal shadow clone technique is generally only safe to use for Jonin. Because of how many clones are created with the multiple shadow clone technique, the chakra cost is far greater, rendering it unsafe for most people other than the Hokage. For this reason, the first Hokage declared it forbidden and hid it away in the Scroll of Seals. Naruto Uzumaki is among the few exceptions to this rule because of the sheer amount of chakra he has access to. There is no established number of created clones separating the regular shadow clone technique from the multiple shadow clone technique. Average users tend to make no more than 5 shadow clones at a time with the regular version, whereas Naruto will make dozens, hundreds, or sometimes even 1,000 with the multiple version. Naruto Shinden, Parent and Child Day, takes it in the opposite direction, showing Naruto use the multiple shadow clone technique, yet only managing to make 2 clones because of how tired he is. Naruto sometimes doesn't even differentiate between the 2 techniques, simply saying shadow clone technique regardless of how many clones he creates. Whereas a small number of clones can be useful in a variety of ways, the huge number of clones created for this technique are almost exclusively used offensively, overwhelming opponents with countless attacks from all around. Naruto also utilizes the multiple shadow clone technique when creating the wind release Rasengan, completing years worth of training within a matter of days. 1,000 years of death. The user tightly clasps their hands together and extends their middle and index fingers, resembling the tiger hand seal. Using the full weight of their body, the user thrusts these 4 fingers between the target's buttocks. Despite the technique's dramatic name, it's not actually harmful. The pain is fairly extreme, however, so much so that when Kakashi uses it on Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto comically leaps into the air, traveling a fair distance. Sakura Haruno blushes to see it used, and Sasuke Uchiha declares both Kakashi and Naruto buffoons. The anime shows those who are familiar with the 1,000 years of death are very unwilling to be subjected to it. It has no effect on unconscious targets. Naruto later uses this technique against Gaara. Instead of his fingers, Naruto uses a kunai with an exploding tag attached. Unlike previous responses to the technique, Pakun calls Naruto's attack brilliant. Peregrine Falcon Drop. The user grabs a falling opponent by their ankles, wraps his legs around their waist, and drives them headfirst into the ground, similar to the front Lotus. Rasengan. The Rasengan is a spinning ball of chakra formed and held in the palm of the user's hand, which is only known to a handful of shinobi. The Rasengan was created by Minato Namikaze, which he based on the tailed beast ball. He spent 3 years creating it, which he intended to be the highest form of shape transformation. Because it represents the high form of shape transformation, mastering the Rasengan also grants the user a great deal of mastery over shape transformation, even if they're unaware of the concept. Like many of Minato's jutsu, the Rasengan does not require hand seals to perform. Once it's formed, it also does not require any additional chakra to sustain, which means that there's no definite limit on how long the Rasengan can be maintained. However, the Rasengan will dissipate if it collides with something, even if it's an unintended target. Though the Rasengan's shape is consistent from user to user, its size varies from only barely large enough to be noticeable to much larger than the user's hand. Greater experience with the Rasengan allows the user to create them in a larger size, and even in one hand. Jiraiya describes the Rasengan as stronger than the Chidori, a statement that Sasuke Uchiha concurs with after comparing the damage caused by the two attacks. On contact, the Rasengan grinds into its target, propels them along the Rasengan's trajectory, either away from the user or into the ground beneath them, and at some point bursts, causing severe damage at the point of contact. Shadow Clone Technique. The Shadow Clone Technique is a clone technique created by Tobirama Senju. This jutsu allows the user to create one or more copies of themselves. The user's chakra is evenly divided between themselves and their clones. Creating one clone will give it half the user's chakra, creating 2 clones will give each a third of the user's chakra, and so on. Depending on how much chakra the user has and how many clones they make, this rapid depletion of their reserves can be dangerous. Because of this, usually only those of at least Jonin level can safely use the standard Shadow Clone technique. The multiple Shadow Clone technique, which creates hundreds of clones to the standard version's dozens, is unsafe to the point of being forbidden. Naruto Uzumaki is an exception to this rule because he has access to the chakra of the Nine Tails, and he can create hundreds of clones without worry. Unlike the basic clone technique, shadow clones are physically real. They possess the same clothing, damage, and transformations as the user at the time of their creation. Most tools and weaponry are copied when the shadow clones are created, but certain chakra constructs and complicated technology won't be duplicated. Because they're visually identical and possess the same chakra as the user, shadow clones are indistinguishable from their original, not even by dojutsu. Madara Uchiha can identify shadow clones using his Rinnegan. Once created, shadow clones can serve a number of purposes. They can be used as decoys, either by keeping opponents preoccupied, or because they can't be told apart, concealing the original's identity. If enough shadow clones are created, they can simply overwhelm an opponent, pinning them down or attacking from multiple directions. Shadow clones can also be used simply to assist the user, joining the user for tactics they can't do alone or being sent to carry out tasks while the user's busy. Shadow clones possess all the same memories as the user, and so will react to unforeseen obstacles just as the user would under the same circumstances. Because they have their own chakra, shadow clones can perform other jutsu, including making more shadow clones. Shadow clones usually disperse once they're struck hard enough, but they have been shown capable of enduring injuries for a time. When a clone's task is completed, it can disperse itself or be dispersed by its user. Once dispersed, the clone's experiences and remaining chakra are transferred back to the user. The shared experiences make shadow clones useful for intelligence gathering. A shadow clone can be sent into hostile territory, gather information without endangering the user, and disperse when finished, thus transferring what they've learned. Alternatively, shadow clones can recon an area, dispersing when they've found what they're looking for in order to let the user know the target's location. Kakashi Hatake discovered that shadow clones can also accelerate training periods. For example, by training alongside one shadow clone for an hour, the user will have 2 hours worth of training experience once the shadow clone disperses. By using hundreds of clones, training that would usually take weeks or months can be completed within a few hours. But because of how much chakra it takes to create just one shadow clone, and because the training itself will likely be arduous even without shadow clones, only Naruto can train in this way. Naruto is indeed able to make effective use of this shortcut, but the combined experiences come with combined mental fatigue, requiring that he take regular breaks. Although they are separate, shadow clones maintain small links between themselves and their original, intended to allow the user to re-establish control when needed. Users can exploit this link to network their clones, causing changes in their own chakra to extend to all others. In certain cases, this link can work against the user, such as when pain caused by the Nine-Tails chakra was felt by all of Naruto's shadow clones. While a user and/or their clones are performing tasks that require concentration, they're unable to have more than a few shadow clones active at a time. In the novelization of Boruto, Naruto the movie, Naruto is consciously aware of what all of his shadow clones around Konohagakure are doing. Although this allows him to have multiple conversations simultaneously, he has difficulty focusing on any one thing, and the original Naruto becomes increasingly strained the longer the shadow clones are active. He drinks coffee and energy supplements in order to remain alert, but as soon as his concentration falters, his shadow clones will all disperse. Shadow of the Dancing Leaf. The user moves close behind a target and carefully matches their movements, following them in the same way that a leaf is followed by its shadow. Simply mimicking a target in this way does no harm to them, but it's useful to set up for other techniques, such as the front lotus or the lion combo. Because of how difficult it can be to use this technique, most genin are unlikely to be talented enough to perform it. Silent killing. As the name suggests, this technique is simply a soundless method of killing an opponent, usually from behind with a blade. Additionally, because the user moves silently, the attack cannot be anticipated or defended against. The user will often slit their opponent's throat, preventing any cry that might give them away. Some shinobi also opt to use covers such as mist or even frost to rob their opponents of their field of vision and then attack them. Strong Fist. Strong Fist is Guy and Lee's characteristic fighting style, the purpose of which is to cause external damage and break bones. It's the exact opposite of the Gentle Fist, which is used mainly by the Hyuga clan. This style of fighting involves smashing your opponent and is generally only used by extremely physically powerful and dominating shinobi. As shown by Sasuke's initial usage of this style, the user must be exceptionally conditioned, or even a brief performance in this style will quickly exhaust and strain the body. It was only after a month of training that Sasuke became able to use this style unhindered. Summoning Technique. The summoning technique allows the user to transport a target to their location. Before an animal can be summoned, a prospective summoner must first form a contract with the animal and/or its species. In the case of the toads, the contract is a scroll that the summoner signs their name on using their own blood, and further marks with the fingerprints of one of their hands. Orochimaru has the snake's contract tattooed to his arms, which he smears with blood each time he wants to perform a summoning. A user can summon different species provided they have signed the respective contracts, as Sasuke Uchiha is able to summon snakes and hawks, while Konohamaru Sarutobi can summon toads and monkeys. Contracts remain active even after death, allowing those revived with the impure world reincarnation to perform summons they established while they were alive. To actually summon an animal, users apply some of their blood to the hand they signed the contract with. Usually they can bite one of their fingers to accomplish this, but blood from injuries elsewhere on their body can also be used. They press the hand's 5 fingers down and channel chakra to the hand, summoning the animal to that location. While usually pressing them at the ground, it's also possible to do so on no surface at all, such as in midair. The amount of chakra gathered in the hand determines the size and number of animals that are summoned. If too little chakra is offered, only a small young animal will be summoned. By offering large amounts of chakra, multiple adult animals can be summoned simultaneously. 2 people who have signed the same contract can pool their chakra to summon especially large animals. If an individual has access to the blood of someone who has signed an animal's contract, they can use the blood to summon the animal. The individual will need to provide their own chakra, however. Animals are typically summoned in order to lend assistance to their summoner, either by carrying out tasks or joining them in combat. Summoners will sometimes use their summons as a base for other jutsu, as with summoning Food Cart Destroyer Technique and summoning Quick Beheading Dance. Summoned animals are not actually required to do anything and may choose instead to harm their summoner. Manda routinely threatens to kill his summoners. Animals can even refuse their summoner's attempt to summon them by sending another of their species in their place. Animals are not summoned indefinitely and will return to wherever they were summoned from when they tire out and/or enough time has passed. Summoners can take advantage of this by riding along when their summon returns home, granting them a quick means of escaping an area. Having the Rinnegan allows the user to circumvent several of the summoning technique's normal limitations. Using the animal path, Rinnegan users can summon dozens of different animals and even people without the need for blood. It's only with the Rinnegan that the demonic statue of the outer path can be summoned, whose actions are directly controlled by the Rinnegan user. Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the originator of the Rinnegan, is able to summon 5 people and the 9-tailed beasts from Kaguya's dimensions, although he needs the chakra of 17 dead Kage to do so. It's also possible to summon naturally occurring non-sentient phenomena. Koji Kashin has summoned the flames from the Flaming Mountains in battle, as their non-chakra origin prevents them from being absorbed. Summoning, Earth Release Tracking Fang Technique. When, for whatever reason, the user cannot find a target, they use this technique to summon a pack of Ninken underground. The Ninken use their superior sense of smell to track the target, converge on their location, and then all together burst from the ground to take hold with their fangs. With the target captured in this way, the summoner can easily locate them and finish them off. During Kakashi Hatake's fight with Zabuza Momochi, he allows Zabuza to injure him a few times so that Zabuza's weapons will be coated with his blood. He then smears some of his blood on a scroll, holds the scroll in his hands as he performs the hand seals, and presses the scroll to the ground as he summons the Ninken. Rather than track down Zabuza's scent, the Ninken track the scent of Kakashi's blood to Zabuza. When Haku later damages the scroll, the summoning is ended prematurely and the Ninken disappear, thus releasing Zabuza. Susanoo. Susanoo is a gigantic humanoid avatar made of the user's chakra, which surrounds them and fights on their behalf, and has been handed down throughout all the generations of the Uchiha clan. It is the strongest ability available to those who have awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan in both eyes. When activated, Susanoo forms around the user and becomes an extension of their will, acting and attacking on their behalf. By default, Susanoo is anchored to its user, and they to it. In its less developed forms, it will move around with the user, and in more completed forms, the user will be suspended within Susanoo, being brought with it as it moves around. This connection allows Susanoo to shield against physical attacks, one that becomes more difficult to penetrate as it's manifested more fully. Although Susanoo is quite effective as a defense, it's able to distinguish in what it blocks. For example, the user can still perform jutsu well within Susanoo, and the attacks will pass through it without complications. Others can be brought within Susanoo with the user's permission, and users can likewise choose to leave Susanoo's protective structure. The latter characteristic can be used against the user. If an opponent can bypass Susanoo, however slightly, and latch onto them, they can be pulled out of Susanoo. With continued mastery, Susanoo can have increased defensive capabilities, even at its ribcage stage, as seen when A was able to crack the rib of Sasuke's Susanoo, but conversely could not crack Madara's. If it's damaged, Susanoo does not regenerate, and it can only be repaired either by advancing it to the next developmental stage or by dispersing it, and then forming it anew. Also, Susanoo is only able to defend against physical attacks, so they're still vulnerable to visual or auditory attacks. Additionally, unless the legs of the Susanoo are fully manifested, the user is still vulnerable to attacks from below. Susanoo draws on the user's chakra in large amounts so long as it's active. Sasuke Uchiha describes the sensation of using Susanoo as feeling pain in every cell of his body, which only increases over time of usage as well as at higher developmental stages. Being a Mangekyo Sharingan-based ability, it also places a strain on the user's eyes the more it's used. However, it's not actually necessary for one's Mangekyo Sharingan to be active while using Susanoo. In fact, Madara Uchiha is able to use it without any eyes at all. Kakashi Hatake's Susanoo is light blue in color. The Susanoo he uses has only been seen in a complete body form. It has the characteristic Tengu nose, a forehead protector like plating on its head, 2 locks of hair falling on either side of its face, a hole in its chin, and a vertical mark extending across its left eye, similar to Kakashi's own signature scar. It wields a katana, but its most notable weaponry are the Mangekyo-shaped shuriken that can warp away targets on contact. Water clone technique. This technique originates from Kirigakure. Using water from the surroundings, the user creates 1 or more copies of themselves. Unlike the standard clone technique, these water clones are physically real, allowing them to interact with others and even perform the same jutsu as the user. Although a single water clone can be quite challenging to a standard genin, water clones have only about a 1/10 of their user's strength. When a water clone is sufficiently damaged, it will revert back to water. In the anime, the clones can alternatively disperse into a mist that acts as a smokescreen to briefly cover the area. Water clones cannot travel too far from their user's location, meaning that running away is a viable option against them. This aside, water clones are useful as support and diversion. The clones can even be used as mobile bodies of water, through which the user can perform their other water-based jutsu. When this is done, the user will need to perform the necessary hand seals. Water release, Great Waterfall technique. A large volume of water is directed from a pre-existing source or expelled high into the air from the mouth. To manipulate so much water at once requires a great deal of chakra. Once high enough, it cascades down onto the targeted area, resembling a giant waterfall. The force of this waterfall is great enough to hollow out the ground, washing away everything in the area. In the aftermath, whatever remains will appear devastated, as though some sort of natural disaster has just occurred. Water release, Water bullet technique. The water release water bullet technique is a highly versatile water release technique with many variations. After needing chakra in their stomach, the user expels a large quantity of water in the form of a powerful torrent, aimed towards their intended target. This technique can also be used collaboratively to increase its range and effect. Water release, Water dragon bullet technique. The user molds water into the shape of a dragon, which they then direct at a target. The water crashes upon their target, dealing significant physical damage. Ideally, users will use pre-existing bodies of water for this technique, but sufficiently skilled users can instead create the water themselves, spitting the dragon from their mouths. The more talented the user, the greater amount of water that the dragon can be made from. Water release, Water formation wall. The user spits a stream of water from their mouth at the ground, which circles around them and rises upward to create a wall. If the user is standing on a body of water, they can instead create the wall from the surroundings. The water wall defends anyone within its perimeter from attack, with the wall's strength being determined by how much of the user's chakra is put into it. Users control how long the wall lasts, as well as how much water it's made from. Because the water is clear, the wall doesn't obstruct the user's vision, allowing them to make their next move uninhibited. The wall's initial formation, if timed correctly, can be used to fend off opponents, flinging them away as the wall rises. Water release, Water shark bullet technique. The user manipulates a volume of water with their hand. By thrusting their hand in a direction, the manipulated water is sent in that direction. As it moves, the body of water takes the shape of a shark, with additional water following in its wake for as long as the user keeps their hand thrust out. Because of how quickly the shark moves, and because of how much water there is, it does extensive damage when it impacts something. Users can also ride within the water shark as it moves, allowing them to travel faster than they're able to swim. White light blade. Using his father's white light chakra saber, a young Kakashi delivers a series of slashes, finishing with a downward cut. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.